Dear friends, I welcome you to my channel. I am Taras Berezovets. Today we will discuss the results of the recently concluded presidential elections in the USA, as well as a publication by the leading conservative outlet, Wall Street Journal, which spoke with future members of the team of the 47th President of the USA, Donald Trump. They presented a plan to resolve the war between Russia and Ukraine, and this refutes the rumors regarding Donald's team. Trump's team had no initial understanding of how to initiate the resolution of the war. On the contrary, Walls Ridgerman, who spoke with key members of Trump's future team, among whom, judging by the comments, I clearly see Marco Rubio, Mike Pompeo, and Richard Grenell as key contenders for important positions in Trump's cabinet. The discussion primarily concerns the Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, and Secretary of the Treasury throughout the year. Today, the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, went on a visit to Hungary where he had to answer questions regarding Trump's peace initiatives. The office of President Zelensky responded to the Wall Street Journal article and stated that, in general, the upcoming plans of the Trump administration are unlikely to be announced in publications. They assessed this publication more as a leak. Meanwhile, it became known who is vying for key positions in the administration of the 47th President of the United States. A fierce struggle has already unfolded there as it concerns the highest stakes. Trump will form a new administration from his closest supporters, as is known, as a result of his first presidential term. During his presidency from 2016 to 2020, Trump managed to fall out with many of his then allies. There is a complete reboot happening in Trump's circle now. There will be many new faces that were not present during his first presidential term. Meanwhile, the first results of the American elections, oil has plummeted, and the price of Brent oil, as well as WTI. Trump hasn't started implementing his policy yet, which is based on the principle of pump, baby pump overall plans. Trump's plans were to bring the price of Brent oil down to the level of $40, $50. President Zelensky in Budapest called the proposal regarding territorial concessions a suicide for all of Europe. Dictator Vladimir Putin, the collapse of the government coalition in Germany, the resignation of popular finance minister and leader of the Free Democratic Party Christian Lindner. He also accused Federal Chancellor Olaf Scholz of failing to assist Ukraine by refusing to supply Taurus cruise missiles. We will also talk about the rise of Elon Musk, a man who increased his wealth by $21 billion in one day. These are the results of Trump's presidential elections. And so, friends, the popular conservative publication Wall Street Journal, which is quite close to the administration of the future 47th President of the USA, Donald Trump, spoke with future members of Trump's cabinet, among whom, since they all communicated anonymously, I learned from the comments about Mike Pompeo, Marco Rubio, Richard Grenell, who are already fiercely competing for positions in the administration of the future American leader. So, the Wall Street Journal reports that Donald Trump's team has prepared a peace proposal regarding the resolution of the war between Russia and Ukraine. And as the Wall Street Journal writes, the key point is that the territory of Ukraine, which will remain under the control of the Ukrainian government, will not seek to join NATO for the next 2 decades. Trump also proposed to freeze the front line over a distance of 1,300 kilometers and to introduce peacekeeping contingents there. The key provision of this peace plan is that Trump insists that this peacekeeping contingent will not be American or from any other international organization funded by the USA. In other words, it will not represent either the United Nations or NATO. As one source from the Wall Street Journal emphasized, in Trump's circle, the United States is ready to pay for the training of military personnel and provide them with any other support, except for sending American men and women to maintain peace in Ukraine. That was a quote. "We will not pay for this. We will make the Poles, Germans, British, and French do it," the source stated. In other words, Trump's plan is what our European allies feared the most. Trump will obviously distance himself from providing military and financial support to Ukraine. He is now sending signals through such publications via representatives of his team regarding the fact that Europe should bear the burden of financing military and financial support for Ukraine, as well as post-war settlement. It is assumed that the United States nevertheless will continue to provide Ukraine with weapons to deter Russian aggression. This is the very club that Trump has saved in case Putin refuses to agree to his peace initiatives, about which many Kremlin-affiliated officials and propaganda representatives previously expressed concern that this plan would be unacceptable. In particular, this was stated by the famous propagandist and non-deputy of the State Duma, Pompeo, who said that Trump will most likely present some unrealistic plan that the Kremlin will reject. And after that, Trump will throw up his hands and say, well, now we will start supporting Ukraine even more. Similar concerns were also expressed by a number of other Kremlin officials and propagandists. Returning to Trump's peace plan, his advisors stated in comments to the Wall Street Journal that one possible mechanism for pressuring Ukraine, if it refuses to accept this plan, will be the cessation of military aid to Ukraine. That is, Trump plans to exert pressure on both sides involved in the war on Russia and Ukraine. Will Trump use this after he takes the presidential seat? The authors of the publication emphasize that any of the points of this plan are currently unknown to the United States. However, the Wall Street Journal writes that under the current state of affairs, neither Ukraine nor Russia agree to implement any part of this plan and show no willingness to compromise. The publication of this plan in the conservative Wall Street Journal close to Trump shows that the ideas previously voiced by the candidate for the U.S. vice presidency, J.D. Vance, a few months ago, which were criticized by Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and a number of international experts and politicians, are largely being realized in the proposals that have been leaked. The Wall Street Journal states that this plan was discussed and prepared in detail by Trump's team, which refutes conspiracy theories suggesting that neither Trump nor his advisors had any idea of what to do next. According to sources in the Wall Street Journal, within Trump's circle, Trump will propose a deal under which Putin may retain the Ukrainian territories currently controlled by his troops along the existing front line. And this is expected, according to Trump and his advisors, to lead to a quicker end to the war. There is currently a fierce struggle for influence over Trump's foreign policy, including the authorship of this peace plan. In particular, between the main candidate for the position of Secretary of State, former German Ambassador Richard Grenell, and the main contender for the head of the Pentagon, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Well, actually, this plan has already been addressed to President Zelensky and his office today, specifically from the President's office advisor. President Zelensky's communications advisor, Dmitry Litvin, stated that such plans will not be announced in newspapers. There are always many Russian leaks in the newspapers. However, it is unclear why not with the Russian ones. If we are talking about a leading American publication that definitely does not belong to yellow journalism. Zelensky himself was also forced to respond to such assumptions today before the summit of the European political community, which is taking place in the capital of Hungary, Budapest. He stated that concessions to Putin are territorially unacceptable for Ukraine. Since the July summit of the European political community in the UK, there has been much talk about the need to persuade Putin to retreat, to make some concessions for Zelensky. Some of those present here strongly advocated for Ukraine to make concessions to Putin. This is not a prize for Ukraine and suicide for all of Europe, Zelensky stated. Currently, in Hungary, which holds the presidency in the European Union until the end of 2024 and which is already claiming the role of Trump's main representative in Europe, as is known, Viktor Orban, as Prime Minister, visited the USA even before the elections, meeting with then Republican candidate Trump at his residence in Florida, Mar-a-Lago, and he stated that Trump is peace, Trump is the end of the war, Trump is victory. Now he is selling himself as Trump's emissary in Europe again, stealing his slogan, "Make Europe Great Again." A similar slogan for Trump, with which he won a second time, is "Make America Great Again." Nevertheless, as we can see now, much will depend on who will be part of the future international team, and also the defense and intelligence agencies of Donald Trump, as it is these officials who will largely determine the direction of his future administration, as well as the outlines of the very peace plan that Donald Trump will ultimately put forward. The table of Vladimir Zelensky and dictator Vladimir Putin. This is no less an interesting story, as publications, particularly the British Financial Times, report the struggle for key positions in Trump's administration has intensified. In particular, Senator Marco Rubio, Bill Hagerty, and Richard Grenell, the former U.S. ambassador to Germany, are vying for the position of Secretary of State. Hagerty, in turn, was the ambassador to Japan, meaning they are all qualified diplomats. And Grenell also served as the Director of National Intelligence. When Trump was still a presidential candidate, Grenell played the role of a shadow Secretary of State, meaning a person, a minister without portfolio, who performed functions. The emissary of Trump in negotiations with various right-wing politicians in regions such as Eastern Europe, Central America, and other regions. Grenell is considered, let's say, the most conservative of all these candidates, and he is the most flexible, believed to be able to make significant concessions during peace negotiations with Putin. He specifically explained Trump's approach to international politics as being based on mutually beneficial terms. Trump focused on reciprocity during his presidency, and something dramatic is needed to attract the attention of the countries we trade with. In his time, Marco Rubio is a stronger supporter of continuing support for Ukraine. However, he stated that the Ukrainians, incredibly brave and strong, but ultimately what we are funding is a dead-end war that needs to be brought to an end. That is, we have here at opposite, let's say, ends of this version, Rubio as the most hardline candidate. Hagerty is a kind of intermediate option, and Grenell, on the contrary, is, so to speak, the most negotiable from the Kremlin's perspective. Which of these candidates Trump will ultimately choose is undoubtedly unknown. But for now, the highest chances are on the side of Richard Grenell, the former ambassador to Germany. At the same time, the key candidate for the position of Secretary of Defense is former Pentagon chief Mike Pompeo, who has consistently signed the so-called Crimea Declaration, in which the United States committed to never recognizing Crimea as part of Russia. He is considered one of Trump's most trusted associates. By the way, he expressed words of gratitude to him in his throne speech after the election results. Also, one of the possible candidates for the position of Secretary of Defense is Senator Tom Cotton and Mike Waltz. Mike Waltz is known for his famous phrase that he called "pump it, baby, pump it." Quote from Waltz. The president understands very well how to exert pressure. We have a huge lever of economic pressure on Russia. The first step will be, in his words, "Pump it, baby, pump it." We are flooding the world with cheaper and cleaner American oil and gas and lowering the price. At the same time, Mike Pompeo is a proponent of a tough resolution to the war between Russia and Ukraine, and he advocates that the peace agreement should in no way look like a victory for Russia. This is reported by the Wall Street Journal. Also, two oligarchs, two billionaires, are vying for another key position in the Trump administration, the position of Secretary of the Treasury. Scott Bessent from Key Square Capital Management and John Paulson, who is a hedge fund manager. Named after him, another well-known billionaire, the richest entrepreneur in America, Elon Musk, who earned $20 billion in just one day, is currently in consultations regarding the formation of a cabinet and may head a non-existent government efficiency fund. He has written about this multiple times on his Twitter. According to his idea, this department should somehow, as he mentioned in very vague terms, deal with the normalization and regulation of government policy and economic relations, as well as reduce the bureaucracy in the American government, which is criticized by many, including Democrats and Republicans. Nevertheless, Trump's economic policy, according to estimates from the upcoming Bloomberg publication, states that the introduction of maximum tariffs that Trump plans to implement immediately after the election results will collapse the American GDP by almost 1%, with a 0.8% increase leading to a price rise of 4.3% by 2028. However, so far the initial results of Trump's election appear to be such that oil prices are starting to decline rapidly. In particular, the popular Brent brand has decreased by almost 1% to $74.31 per barrel, while the WTI brand has fallen by 0.1% to $70.92 per pound barrel. All of this indicates that Trump has not yet fulfilled his threat to increase oil and gas production, thus attracting a key OPEC state, particularly Saudi Arabia, and this was also stated the day before by Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, expressing doubts and concerns that Trump would bring the price of Brent oil down to $50, possibly even lower, by May. Earlier, Trump himself repeatedly stated that if the price of Brent oil falls to $70 per barrel, Putin will not be able to finance the war. This, in fact, is his key idea. Meanwhile, the government coalition in Germany, the so-called traffic light coalition of 3 participants, has collapsed. One of them, the Free Democratic Party, left the coalition after the popular finance minister and leader of the Free Democratic Party, Christian Lindner, was dismissed. He immediately accused Federal Chancellor Olaf Scholz of personally obstructing, effective military assistance to Ukraine. He stated this today. He is quoted by the Berliner Zeitung. At the same time, he stated that the Free Democratic Party has never wavered in its support for Ukraine. Lindner reported that Scholz demanded to provide Ukraine with 3 billion euros. However, Lindner pointed to the difficult financial situation and suggested to Scholz instead to provide Ukraine with Taurus cruise missiles to strike Russian territory. However, as the Berliner Zeitung writes, Scholz categorically rejected Lindner's idea. And according to the data, the issues of the FDP and CDU completely coincide. Recently, CDU leader Friedrich Merz stated that Russia needs to be given a 24-hour ultimatum. If the attacks on civilian infrastructure do not stop, Germany must immediately provide Ukraine with Taurus cruise missiles, allowing Ukraine to strike Russian military targets deep within Russian territory. Essentially, when Lindner was dismissed, the government consisting of 3 coalition parties completely fell apart. Following Lindner, other members of the Free Democratic Party of Germany also resigned. The next early elections in the Bundestag are expected to take place in March 2020. For the 5th year, we see that Ukraine has served as the direct cause of the collapse of the German government coalition. However, it must be said that under Scholz, despite providing significant assistance to Ukraine, Germany was the 2nd largest donor of military and financial aid to Ukraine after the United States. Nevertheless, Scholz faced a large number of complaints from other allies. Well, Trump undoubtedly has complaints against all European allies, not just Scholz, but essentially against all other European countries, probably with the exception of Hungary. Let's see, friends. We will keep an eye on the development of this situation. In any case, leave your opinion regarding Trump's peace plan published in the Wall Street Journal. How realistic you think the idea of creating a demilitarized zone is. What international contingent would be involved if it is not the UN? If it is not a NATO contingent, then it could enter for demarcation. According to Trump, we do not yet know. What do you think? And to be honest, what is your opinion regarding the idea of a moratorium on Ukraine's NATO membership for the next 20 years? Will this work? Thank you for watching this video, friends. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. We have only about 10,000 left. This is nothing at all. I'm sure we can reach 1 million subscribers. We will achieve this result very quickly and will continue to move forward In the meantime, thank you to all the sponsors, partners, and friends of the channel for your invaluable help. Take care of yourselves. Glory to Ukraine. Glory to the armed forces of Ukraine. Glory to the Ukrainian Special Forces. Glory to the Territorial Defense Forces. Major of the Ukrainian Almitry Berezovets with you. Until we meet again. Bye-bye.